Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Reaver of Common Sense, the show that says what others won't. Tonight, we're not just talking TV. We're opening a wormhole to the hearts of modern sci-fi, exploring creativity, rebellion, and the timeless battle between imagination and censorship. Our guest tonight is a true architect of worlds. He helped redefine television science fiction through smart storytelling, as I stumble across everything, layered characters, and a fearless push into uncharted territory, where few spots or few shows dare to go. His work has inspired legions of fans, sparked philosophical debates, and pushed the boundaries of what sci-fi on TV could look like. From the mythological heavy episode of Stargate SG-1 to the thrilling survival themes in Atlantis and the darker, grittier edge of Stargate universe, he shaped three distinctly different sci-fi tones under the same franchise banner. And then with Dark Matters, he created a whole new universe, one packed with memory wipe mercenaries, moral dilemmas, and unexpected twists. He penned iconic episodes, built unforgettable arcs, and earned the loyalty of fans across the galaxy who still quote his dialogue in binge shows today. He's a producer, writer, executive, and creative rebel. Joseph, let me see if I can get this right. Mallozzi.
Oh, so close. You know, you basically that build-up was fantastic. Mallozzi, but close enough.
Mallozzi. God dang it.
You know, I have to tell you, we're ticking past like 9 p.m. on the East Coast. We're getting very close to my bedtime, but your theme song surely woke me up.
Thank you. Like I said, that was Sackhead. Sean created that for me. I'm a metalhead at heart across a lot of genres. So, but let's see.
I would have pegged you more for a Celine Dion guy, but.
But let's jump into it. And I'm going to start out with the big question. Yeah. I'm not going to wait until the end. Let's start out with the big question. All right. Do you believe Stargate still has a future? And if so, any thoughts or guesses on what the future might look like?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely. Stargate has a future. I mean, Stargate was MGM's biggest franchise, biggest television franchise. I mean, it's up there with Bond. So when Amazon acquired the rights or bought out MGM, they acquired the rights to Stargate. And I've said it's, only a matter of time before they launch a new show. But as we were talking before we came on the air, I mentioned the fact that because it's such an important franchise, I think Amazon wants to make sure that they get it right. And I think that's what's taking so long.
Yeah, I'd rather see them do it right than rush it. If you had to guess, would you say a start over reboot, a continuation, or a soft reboot?
I do not think a full reboot would be the way to go. Honestly, I've always held that, you can, the challenge is always the fact that you can't make a show just for the pre-existing fans, for essentially a franchise that's been off the air for 10 years. You have to launch a show for new fandom. But if you're smart about it, you create this new show with these new characters and you place it within the existing Stargate universe that the longtime fans are familiar with. So in that respect, it's a great jumping on point for new fans, but at the same time, there's the opportunity to bring in some, old favorites like a General O'Neill or Carter, and reward old fans as well.
All right. And it is a difficult task they got ahead of them. Who is the easiest and who is the hardest actor to work with?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I don't want you to throw anybody under the bus, but everybody knows some people are hard to work with, some aren't, and that's just a fact of life.
Yeah, in my time, it's difficult because each actor brings something different. I mean, like Amanda Tapping, who played Samantha Carter, we could always rely on because she was the character with the science background, and so we would write what we'd refer to as technobabble, which I guess it's easy to write, but it's really hard to deliver in a believable way on screen, and Amanda always delivered. Not only that, but I mean, she actually would research, the background of whatever she was talking about. So she kind of knew what she was talking about. So, I love the fact that I could always rely on her. Another actor was Robert Picardo from Star Trek fame. He was terrific. And also, Richard Dean Anderson was fantastic. Because we always used to love to write for Rick, because he used to love to do humor, and used to love to write humor. On the other hand, not that it was difficult, but the flip side of Rick was sometimes when you were watching dailies, you never knew what you were going to get, because he liked to improvise, or so sometimes it was like a pleasant surprise or not what would end up on screen.
I've seen some of the conferences held with the different actors over the years, and Richard Dean Anderson seems like the smart ass of the group that just wants to joke around more than be serious.
That was a good way of putting it. Yeah, he was a smart ass, but a lot of fun to work with, and just a really good guy.
All right, let's see what's up next. All right, streaming has changed the game for genre TV. Is it easier or harder now to get a sci-fi project off the ground?
I would say right now equally hard for me. It's interesting because with the proliferation of channels and streamers, you think it would be easier to get a show on the air, but not really. I mean, it's still very much a challenge. A lot of it is who you know. What have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And, kind of the type of programming. Sci-fi is always very tough, especially far future sci-fi, which tends to be more expensive. And executives in general kind of shy away from it because they think, generally people don't tune into far future sci-fi, which is why you're rarely ever going to find far future sci-fi on network television. It's, if anybody's going to take a chance, it's going to be a streamer.
You would think with today's technology that special effects would have dropped the cost overhead for a sci-fi show compared to years ago. I mean,
it is getting cheaper, but it's not only cost. I think executives, I kind of generalize here, but it's just from my experience going out pitching, they tend to, like I said, shy away from far future ship-based shows that I think are, to kind of term alien to a lot of like the average person sitting at home. But I mean, to be honest with you, they say that about a lot of things. I mean, Westerns were out of style for the longest time. And then, a Western breaks out and then everybody's making Westerns until,
then you get Firefly.
Yeah. And then people are not interested anymore. And then suddenly it's like, oh, no one wants to watch Westerns. It was the same thing with the anthology shows. Like Black Mirror was one that kind of broke the mold in the contemporary sense. I mean, there used to be shows like Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits that did quite well. And then for the longest time, there were no anthology shows. And I remember going out and pitching anthology shows and executives saying, no one wants to watch these anthology shows. People want to watch shows with recurring characters. And then Black Mirror came out and suddenly anthology shows were in vogue. I think they did maybe 3 or 4 of them that didn't do as well. And now suddenly executives are back to nobody wants to watch on television shows anymore.
All right, we got a question out of the chat. If you don't mind, you can pop it up on screen here. You can see that, right?
I can.
David Hewlett, as it turns out, is something of a tech nerd. Was that obvious back when making Stargate Atlantis, and did that come across in his approach to the McKay character?
Not that we kind of overtly addressed his fascination with technology, but very much like Amanda, like I mentioned on Stargate SG-1, David on Atlantis kind of deep dove into his scripts and his character. So he would come by sometimes with questions that sometimes we could or couldn't answer with regard to the science. So, I mean, he was another guy who, took his character and his character science background very seriously. And I mean, I can kind of tell he was into the tech.
All right, how was it working with Jason Momoa, knowing the projection that he's made from here?
I'm amazed, but at the same time, not really, because he always had a bigger than life personality. Jason was always kind of like a big kid. I remember when we were out auditioning for the Ronin character, and Robert Cooper, co-creator of Atlantis in the universe, he had a character in mind. I don't know if you ever watched the show Survivor, but many, many years ago, there was a character called Rupert, who was kind of like a mountain man, kind of the tough, guy, and Rob imagined this Ronin character like this Rupert kind of mountain man character. I remember we auditioned, and I think the studio wanted like one actor who was totally wrong for the role, and this Sci-Fi Network wanted a guy who was just coming off a soap opera who was completely wrong for the role, and then we saw Jason, who was coming off, I think, Baywatch at the time, or North Shore, and Rob was like, "That's him, that's Ronan," and he embraced the role, and Jason was a lot of fun to work with. Like I said, he was always, very much the life of the party, the big kid, and I see that still when I see him in interviews now, or behind the scenes of whatever productions he works on.
Total brain fart there. My daughter's in chat, and she just busting on that. Men are all children, so that just kind of
true to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking while you were talking about that, and I can't think of anybody that didn't fit the character they played in all three series. All of them just seemed to fit perfect with their role.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you think they were all perfect for their roles, and they were, but then again, you think, if any of them could have been different. I mean, in SG-1 got greenlit because of Richard Dean Anderson. So without him, the show would not have gotten greenlit. And I wasn't around for the casting of SG-1, but I know there were other actors who were, under consideration for Atlantis. I remember, there's various actors in consideration, especially for the role of John Shepard. I think there were 3, when it came right down to it. And then in the case of McKay, McKay almost didn't make it to Atlantis, the McKay character, because Brad and Rob had written a role for a medical doctor, and they were unable to cast the role. They were not able to find the perfect actor for the role. In fact, actually, I think they wrote it for an actor who ultimately passed. And so they were looking to fill the role, and they couldn't find anyone. They couldn't find anyone. And we're getting round to like the 11th hour. And then Rob suggested, well, why don't we just bring over someone from SG-1? How about McKay? And I was like, okay, what's McKay's first name? And he was like, Rodney. And I was like, oh no, we got to change that. That's terrible.
Meredith.
Yeah. And he that's how Rodney McKay ended up on Stargate Atlantis. He almost did not make the trip.
All right. Have fans ever surprised you with a theory or interpretation that made you rethink your own writing?
That's, off the top of my head, when you say something like that, I think of, like, my mind goes to True Detective season 1, where I watched up until the final episode, and then I read all these fan theories, and I was like, wow, this is brilliant. The fans have figured it out. What a great series. And then I turned into that finale, and I was like, what the fuck is this? This makes no sense. This is like, we've gone off the deep end here. So, kudos to the fans. In terms of like Stargate, I'm trying to think. I don't think they ever had, the thing about Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis is they were more episodic shows. So we never had kind of serialized mystery elements that, kind of built over time. And there were a few serialized elements, but not really. The shows were fairly episodic. So it was kind of hard for the fans to form really actual theories, maybe more so in the universe. And, with regard to, the final mission of Destiny and the message and the background radiation of the universe. And they came up with some interesting theories. And that one I can't comment on because Brad Wright had a ending for Stargate Universe that he still holds, holds on to in the hopes that, one day he'll be able to finally tell that story or complete that story.
Okay. We got 2 questions again. Who else was considered for John Shepard? Making you think here.
Yeah, how do I put this? I'm just reluctant to say because, I don't know how the actors feel about the fact that, they didn't get the role. But I mean, to be honest with you, like casting is so interesting because I think from the actor's point of view, they think if they don't get a role, it's because they screwed up somehow. And 9 times out of 10, I tell actors it's not something you do. It's something somebody else brings that either we were looking for specifically or are often something that we hadn't expected that they ended up bringing to the table that, we're like, wow, we never thought of that interpretation. We're taking with something like that. So I'll just say that basically one of the actors, although he missed his chance on our show, ended up on a very successful, long-running medical show.
Nice.
So that's your hint.
All right, and the next question is, how does it feel as a writer when an actor absolutely nails a scene the way you pictured it in your head when you're writing the script?
Pretty awesome. I mean, for me, a lot of it comes down to humor. Like I'm a firm believer in humor going such a long way towards allowing audiences to connect with characters. That's why I think McKay is such a fan favorite. And a lot of the humor, I kind of like his throwaway humor that sometimes actors don't get. But when they do, it's awesome. So, I mean, when I think of like actors who pretty much always got what I want, I mean, the first actor that comes to mind is really an actress from Dark Matter, Jodelle Ferland, who played the character of Five, who, whenever I would watch dailies, she would always deliver the lines exactly as I imagined them on the pages, exactly as I wrote them for her. I mean, in your head, when you write these characters, you not only write the dialogue, you write the, in your head, you're thinking of the delivery. And she would always deliver, like 100%, exactly what I was looking for, which is kind of amazing because most actors will give you like anywhere between 30 to 90%, but she was always dead on, which amazed me.
Nice. All right, we're gonna hit a quick break. It's like about 3 minutes, and then we'll come back and there's more fan questions. If not, we'll continue with other questions.
Delightful.
You are listening to Reaver of Common Sense right here on SHR Media.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ever dream of escaping the daily grind? At Escapist Travel and Tours, we make those dreams your reality. From breathtaking adventures to cultural immersions, we offer escapes tailored just for you. Let us take you to places where every moment feels like a new chapter in your life's adventure. Visit www.escapist.travel or call us today at 1-855-885-81776. Your escape awaits.
Attention, all patriotic women of faith. Yep, I'm talking to you, sis. Are you looking for high-quality, super soft apparel that reflects your love for country and your devotion to God? Look no further than Carry Girl Gear. Picture this. You rocking a tee so soft it's like being hugged by a cloud, all while showing off your love for God and country. Sounds dreamy, right? Well, welcome to reality, babes, because that's what we're all about here at Carry Girl Gear. We specialize in super soft tees, tanks, and more, designed specifically for the strong, patriotic woman who proudly wants to carry their message of faith and freedom. When you shop with us, you're not just getting a t-shirt. You're joining a community of like-minded women who are proud to wear their beliefs straight on their tees. So whether you're sipping sweet tea on the porch or leading the charge for faith and freedom, do it in a Carry Girl tee. Because life's too short for stiff, boring tees. carrygirl.com, where faith and freedom meets fashion.
Come listen to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show. Live on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Rumble channel, SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, Spreaker, and wherever great conservative podcasts are found. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guides you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Raised as a free-range child with dirt, stains, mud, and freedom, BZ broadcasts from North Idaho, comfortably surrounded by actual normal people. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room on rumble.com. Click on live chat to join. Now, with 37% more umbrage and 19% more bulbosity than previous shows, featuring delicious Liberty additives for the best in late-night conservatarian talk radio. BZ reminds you that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, fat-shamed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
What is the Edge of Liberty? News, politics, commentary, sarcasm, alcohol, and high blood pressure. It's as American as a good revolution. So tune in every Monday and Friday at 12 Pacific, 3 p.m. on the East Coast on the SHR Media Network and KLRN Radio. For details, visit www.shrmedia.com.
And welcome back to the Reaver of Common Sense. I am your host, Jersey Joe, right here on SHR Media, conservative media done right. We have Joseph Mallozzi. Hopefully I didn't screw it up again. Before the end of the show, I'm going to get it right. That's going to be my main thing. All right. Coming back, and we have another fan question.
True.
Bring it up. Amazon calls and hands you the keys to the SG franchise. What do? Revive SG Atlantis, revive SGU, or something else?
I would do something else. As I said, in order to relaunch or launch a new Stargate series, you got to offer the best of both worlds, something for new fans, something for old fans. So, I would essentially do a show with a new team that is assembled, and I don't know if there are on the gamma. I haven't really thought of it because it's really not. I do not have this opportunity. Maybe they're on the gamma base or another another galaxy, and it's a show that follows this new team. But I don't know, maybe General Carter's in charge of the SGC. There's an opportunity for characters from the past to join the occasional adventure. I'm kind of low on details here, but philosophically, I know the type of show I would want to make.
I think one of the things that I don't want to say hurt, but didn't help SGU was you really couldn't bring in a lot of the main stars from the past as easy as you could with Atlantis. You were able to, gate them over to Atlantis.
Yeah, there were two things actually. Really, I mean, when we spun off SG-1 and kicked off Stargate Atlantis, the idea was to do a season, an overlap season, and have SG-1 essentially hand off the torch to Atlantis and let Atlantis run. And then, sci-fi ended up picking up SG-1 for that extra season. And so, for 2 seasons, the writing department had to write and produce 40 episodes of television in a year, which is crazy. We back in the day. And so that helped launch Atlantis. But then when, Universe launched, it did so without the benefit of Atlantis. And I always thought that was a mistake. I always felt that we should have launched Universe, first season of Universe, alongside a 6th season of Atlantis. In terms of carryover or, sort of crossover of those two shows, would have been tougher. I mean, we did end up doing it, but just tonally, Atlantis was more akin to SG-1 than Universe was to either of them. So, I think that was one of the things that I think turned off or disappointed some fans who were longtime fans of SG-1 and Atlantis. They missed that kind of sense of humor that they've grown accustomed to with the Stargate franchises. And so to them, Stargate Universe was very different, kind of very alien.
Well, one of the things I hope, and I doubt I'll get my wish on this, but any revamp is not what they're doing lately and doing like 6-7 episodes a year. That drives me up a wall. You only get a couple episodes, and I understand cost and all that factor into it, but I miss the days when there was 18, 20 episodes and you had, a while to watch it. Now it's like,
Well, I mean, it depends what you watch. Most network shows are still like 20 plus episodes. The only problem is they tend not to be sci-fi, like very rarely are they genre. Most of the genre now is on streamers, and they tend to, tend toward, they were tending towards 13, now it's 10, between 8 and 10.
All right. The other thing,
people ask me, like, what's the perfect number of episodes? I know that if I was staffing on a show, as I say, it would definitely be 20 plus. If I was as a show creator, I like that 10 to 13 episode per season order. If I'm watching a show, 6 is fine.
All right. The one thing I should have done at the beginning of the show is, would you give us your background, how you got started in this career?
Yeah, well, I've always wanted to be a writer, and I assumed I would write books one day. And then I was looking for work, and I thought maybe getting into script writing, and I sent out my resumes to a bunch of places. Everyone, turned me down because I was looking for a job as a script reader. And then I got my foot in the door pitching for animation, and I got my foot in the door writing for animation. I wrote, for children's cartoons for a couple of years, and then I story edited for them, and then I became a director of development at an animation studio. Then I transitioned to live action, and I did a teen sitcom called Student Bodies and another show called Big Wolf on Campus, and then did a little, couple of 1-hour action adventures, and then ultimately ended up on Stargate with my writing partner at the time, Paul Mully. And the deal was we would, we landed there in SG-1's 4th season, and at the time, the thinking was that the show would do a 5th season and then would be done. That would be it. That was really the norm for most shows. We did the 5th season. We assumed that was going to be the end. And then Sci-Fi picked us up for a 6th season. And we assumed that would be the last one. And so every year we produced a new season, assuming it would be the last one. Yeah. And then every season we got picked up until season 10, which finally I came around to assuming we would be back for an 11th season, and that was the year we got canceled.
Murphy's Law. Yeah. I'm going to throw something I've read, and I don't know if it's true or not, but there was talks that I'm
going to guess probably not, but go ahead.
If Stargate Atlantis had gone on, that the Wraith would have become more of a ally to the Atlantis crew than an enemy.
Well, that's interesting. To be honest with you, we didn't. Sorry, like it's my Alexa reminding me to update my blog. We didn't really beat out any stories. We had kind of ideas for stories, about like 20 story ideas, and some of them did involve Todd as more of an ally. So not necessarily the Wraith in general, but certainly bringing Todd on side. And I remember, a big part of that was the unproduced Stargate Atlantis movie, Stargate Extinction, that Paul and I wrote, that we'd actually written because we weren't sure if we would get a 6th season pickup. And so Rob Cooper gave us the idea and was like, look, why don't you shoot this, the script at the end of the 5th season of Atlantis, so that if the show doesn't get picked up, then you've got a movie, and if it does get picked up, you've got the first 2 episodes, which would be like the opening 2-parter. and it was like a time travel kind of episode where they end up, they're on their way back to Pegasus Galaxy, and they get stranded in a different galaxy, and they jump into the future, and they encounter a future version of Todd, who's a villain. But on board the ship is a current version of Todd the Wraith, who ends up assisting us and becoming our ally. And it was actually a lot of fun. And we never got the green light from MGM to go ahead and produce it. So, it just kind of sat on the shelf and then was ultimately forgotten, unfortunately.
Because I remember, I forget exactly when it was. I know it was after Stargate 1 had ended, and I think they announced that Stargate Atlantis was ending. And they said, well, we got these direct-to-DVD movies all set up to go. And then the economy kind of tanked, and everything went to hell. And I was just, damn, man, I was so looking forward to it.
Trifecta. It was like economy. It was kind of the bottom falling out of the DVDs, industry. And then just MGM. MGM was going through a, even rougher time than most at the time. So it deep six that movie, which is too bad.
All right. Some arcs, like the Ori, the Wraith, or the Lucian Alliance, sparked debate. Which villain or faction were you most proud of building?
I was always a big fan of Ball. The late Cliff Simon was brilliant in the role. I was kind of like, growing up, I was always a big fan of the Bond villains. The very stylish ones. And whenever I go see a Bond movie, I'd be like, don't give the speech, just kill him, get it over with. He's gonna escape, and inevitably he always did. So Ball, he was a fashion. He was the gold equivalent of a Bond villain. Stylish. We did that episode Ex Deus Machina where he comes to Earth and he goes undercover kind of as a business magnate. And also he was a character who also had a sense of humor, which kind of I love. If we can imbue a character with a sense of humor, it doesn't have to be a lot. It's just a touch. They're just so much fun to write for. And Cliff always delivered and was so much fun to write for.
So that's one of the things that kind of connected with within the EMS fire emergency services. We've got a sense of humor, whether people realize it or not. That's how we deal with the stress. So seeing kind of like these military personnel, the high stress situation and the smart ass comments that go back and forth, that connects more to reality than anything for me. It's beautiful. I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, you need kind of that sense of humor, especially doing what you did, and in kind of the darkness, in the darkest of times, that sense of humor just goes such a long way towards bringing everyone's spirits up.
All right. Paul Crocker saying that Ball was his favorite too.
Yeah, he was great.
All right, looking back, which episode or arc are you most proud of writing in the Stargate universe, and what makes it stand out to you?
An arc. That's interesting. Like I said, I mean, when I think back to like my time on Stargate, I really think more in terms of episodes than arcs, and there were certainly arcs. There was the Ori arc and the Free Jafar arc and the Replicator arc. To be honest with you, I mean, I enjoyed them all. To be honest with you, the individual episodes stand out more for me than kind of the general arcs.
Okay. And then we have another question. In season 9 of SG-1, the Ori were introduced as the new enemy. Were there any other enemies considered to fill the vacuum left by the defeated Goa'uld?
No, this would be a question for Robert C. Cooper, who was a co-creator of Atlantis and Universe, but essentially took over the reins as a co-showrunner with Brad Wright in the show's 4th season when we came on board. And he had kind of wrapped up wanted to wrap up the Goa'uld storyline. Again, we were working under the assumption that season 8 would be the show's last, and so we wrapped up a bunch of storylines, and then we got the pickup, and Rob decided we kind of needed a new villain. He wanted to introduce, kind of give it a bit of a fresh start, and I came up with the Ori, and very different from the Goa'uld, very different technology, very different kind of mindset. But I mean, I think it was kind of interesting in his approach. Again, it's kind of a conversation you should have with Rob, to ask him what the hell he was thinking. But I know that he wanted to kind of inject a bit, kind of a freshness into Stargate after like 8 years, to hopefully bring in new viewers as well.
I don't want to say I didn't like him. I wasn't, a huge fan of the Ori. I was kind of, it was kind of almost to me like it just thrown in there because, last minute. I could be totally wrong on that, but I did like how they wrapped it in with the ancients.
Right. Did you feel that their spaceships looked like toilet seats?
Not until you just said that.
Okay, well, you take a look.
No, now that you said it, I'm like, oh shit.
Do these look like toilet seats to anybody else? Anyways,
and I'm not trying to knock it. I mean, I didn't dislike it. It just seemed to me.
I mean, to be honest with you, again, I wouldn't say I have preferences for arcs. I certainly know there are certain arcs I didn't enjoy as much. Although I know fans loved the arcs, I was never a big fan of the ancients. I always find them it was kind of too esoteric. So, I mean, you can always tell the type of episodes I like to write because they never had anything to do with the ancients, or basically barely anything to do with it. That was more sort of Robert C. Cooper's wheelhouse.
See, now, when we go to the movies, what is it, the Ark of the Truth?
Yeah.
Now, that I liked Orion, but just...
Again, Robert C. Cooper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but during the series, I wasn't that I guess impressed, I should say, with them. But see, I like the ancients. I did. I gotta admit, I like the idea of the ancients. That there was this ancient civilization that was more advanced than us. I guess it's wishful thinking on my part.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of fans did and still do, and a lot of fans are, every once in a while on Axel Pitch, it would be a great spin-off series, a series about the ancients and how they got and a bit about their background. And I thought, that is one Stargate show I would have no interest in either watching or working on personally.
See, I'm also to jump shows. Star Trek. I would love to see a series or a movie that explains the Borg, their origin. I wouldn't mind that movie, but
favorite Star Trek series?
Next Generation. No, Enterprise.
Really interesting. It's interesting. I mean, I grew up with the original Star Trek, and then I didn't really watch much of Deep Space Nine, although I think
I never got
everything people tell me about kind of the Dominion War storyline makes me assume that I would like it. And then I watched Voyager, but I never watched. Actually, I skipped over Next Gen just because I thought the uniforms were so weird and ill-fitting in that first season. I couldn't watch, and I never did watch Enterprise, but. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I'm actually going to be launching this show of sorts on X. I'm going to be doing spaces 3 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 and Sundays at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And I'm going to be covering 32 of the best episodes of the 32 best sci-fi shows as chosen by the fans.
Yeah, you
so
did the team.
Yeah. And so we're going to be covering everything from Andor to the X-Files. And I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've seen the 32 top shows as chosen by the fans. I have watched from beginning to end, I mean, pilot to finale, 8. And only 8. And 4 of those shows I worked on. 13 of the 32 shows on that list, I have not seen any episodes of. So I mean, this is kind of an experiment for me because I want to see if I check out what is purported to be the best episode of that show, will it convince me to watch the entire series? So it's, like I said, an experiment of sorts for me.
See, for me, it's all right. I got into Star Trek through Next Generation, but I really like the Enterprise. Don't ask me why. There's just something about it, just that origin story kind of it. I never got into Firefly until it went off air and got bored one night, started watching it. Now, both me and my wife love it and wish it would come back. And that's what I was joking about when you were talking about Western, because how's that described? It's a sci-fi Western.
Yeah, space Western, yeah.
But yeah, those are kind of like Andor. I tried watching it, and it's not that I didn't like it. It just didn't keep my interest.
Yeah. I mean, I Andor and The Mandalorian are two shows on the list I have not seen an episode of. I've not seen any Star Wars shows. I've not seen the Star Wars movie since, I want to say Return of the Jedi, because that was a movie that did it for me. I was actually a Star Wars fan until that movie came out and the Ewoks kind of trotted onto the screen, and I was like, what is going on here? And young me took it personally, and so I tuned out and did not watch any more Star Wars product except for Attack of the Clones. And that's only because Stargate producer Robert Cooper tricked me into going to go see it. And I did not love it. So because Andor and Mandalorian were chosen from the fans and they chose a specific episode, I'm curious to see. And Andor and Babylon 5 will be kicking off the first episode.
That's another one. I Babylon 5, I never...
Yeah, Babylon 5 is kind of an interesting one in that, I mean, it's a bit dated. I remember when I first watched it, I didn't love the pilot. I thought the visual effects were like, something like out of an 80s video game. But then I stuck with it, and it's so mythologically rich and wonderfully character driven. And, a lot of it is, like I said, very dated, and some of the, messaging is a little heavy-handed, but overall, I think it's actually quite a good show if you can get past all that. I basically watched the first 3 seasons and then got distracted by life. So I'm curious to see if revisiting the show will convince me to go back and rewatch and complete all 5 seasons.
That's what C-Trot is saying. Babylon 5 season 1 is a torture to get through, but it gets really good from season 2 on.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I kind of grew to like season 1. One of the things that I kind of bumped on was is it Michael O'Hara, who was the lead actor. I thought his performance was a bit kind of stiff, so I wasn't really sure about him that first season. But then in the second season, he gets replaced. I actually missed him. And
that's like a Stargate universe. The first couple episodes were kind of didn't seem like it had its footing just yet, but as season 1 went along, it picked up the pace, and everything started connecting from there, where it all made sense. But the first couple episodes were kind of just
setting the tone, setting the stage. I think the first 2 episodes were supposed to be a 2-parter that became a 3-parter, and then there was one story. Fire and Dark is supposed to be one episode, but it became 2 episodes. So I think that kind of contributed to the pacing issues that the fans complained about. Another one is it's a ship-based show, and so there was a desire to open things up. There was a concern that if we're just basically on this ship for 24/7, it's going to feel so oppressive. So we're looking for ways to open things up, which is where the communication stones came in, and that was another technology or narrative element that a lot of fans did not respond to as positively.
They didn't like that. I always wanted, because they said they kept saying, well, we don't know how it works, but you have Earth redid it. I mean, it's not the ancient design; it's a remade. But you're telling us you don't know how it works. How did you make it then? That's the one that always confused me. All right. Shit. Who replaced Richard Dean Anderson? My mind has gone blank.
Well, no one replaces Richard Dean Anderson.
Well,
however, Ben Browder did come on board and joined the team in season 9.
Because it was him and
Claudia Black. So Claudia Black, yeah. So Ben and Claudia co-starred on a show called Farscape.
That's
Australian show, which I thought was a lot of fun, and I watched all of Farscape, and then, Rick more and more wanted to sort of spend less time on the show, and we were always convincing him to come back. And after season 8, he was like, that's it, I'm done. And we thought, okay, how are we going to move forward? And I mentioned Ben because I know that Sci-Fi really loved him because they aired Farscape. And so we'd reached out to Ben. In fact, I'll tell you, he was actually the guy I had in mind for Shepard on Atlantis, but he was busy doing Farscape, so he did not even enter the conversation. And then, when the opportunity to cast him in SG-1 came around, we reached out, and he was great because Ben, he ended up watching all 300 episodes or so of the show before coming on board. And, we introduced the Vala character, it was season 8. And, again, because, I was a big fan of hers from Farscape. And, we kind of pitched having both Ben and Claudia on the show as regulars in season 9, and Sci-Fi was like, no, that's too much like Farscape, even though the characters are completely different. They were like, no. So we brought Claudia in for 6 episodes, and the network ended up loving her. They saw the episodes, they loved her, and they're like, great, let's bring her in for the rest of the season. But at that point, the ship had sailed, and we're like, well, look, if we get a 10th season pickup, we'll make her a series regular. And we did. I
always wonder if there was any connection between the two shows, but as you said,
outside of me watching and loving Farscape, and the fact that they were both on Sci-Fi Network,
that worked out perfect. Let's see where we're at. All right, let's jump over to Dark Matters because we got about less than 10 minutes to go. Season 3 ended with a cliffhanger, and fans still talk about it. What would season 4 have looked like if you have gotten the green light?
I approached Dark Matter, every season of Dark Matter, like the installment in a book series. So the first, season of the first book, was very much about them waking up on the ship, not having their memories, and ultimately finding out who they are, that they're criminals, the worst of the worst. And then it ultimately ends with one of them turning against them and all of them going to prison. And in my mind, if I only got one season of the show, I thought that would have been a perfect ending. It would have been like a heartbreaking ending for fans, but I thought that worked. And the second season is them basically deciding to, fight against their destiny and be better. And it blows up in their faces, literally, with the destruction of the space station at the end of season 2. Then season 3 is one of their own turns dark side, and no spoilers, but the entire third season is sort of the battle against their former ally. And then the end of the third season introduces these aliens on these things called the Black Ships. And the plan was for the 4th season to focus on this alien invasion, and ultimately the 5th and final season to focus on the revolt of the androids. It's Android Revolt. And so, and it's unfortunate I did not get the chance to complete my stories, but such is the industry.
And this is going to be a combination for both Stargate and Dark Matter. I'm going to give you 2 examples of mine. Mm-hmm. Were there any episodes that you actually got emotional over? Because like when the doctor from SG-1, when she was killed, that one was that one was a little emotional. And amazingly, the one that got me on Stargate Atlantis is the Rodney McKay when he reverts back to being a child state.
Oh, the Shrine.
Yeah, both of those actually. I'll admit they got me.
Yeah, the Shrine, written by co-creator Brad Wright, and that was actually one of the episodes. That was the episode that was picked as the best episode of Atlantis. For me, I guess it's just certain moments, and basically, when you're so close to the show and you're making the show, you watch the daily so many times, and you watch the mixes. You get kind of blasé about it all. I mean, how kind of how the magic is made. I remember once actually tuning into SG-1. I think the episode was Meridian. Yeah, it was Meridian, where Daniel Jackson dies. And there's that final scene where he's with O'Neill and he steps through the gate, you assume for the last time. And I was like, ooh, that is a great scene. Michael Shanks and Richard Dean Anderson.
I forgot that one.
Yeah. And much the same way for Atlantis, it was Sunday. Even though I thought kind of the idea of kind of the explosive tumors was a little silly. That final scene where Rodney's on the balcony and Beckett shows up, materializes, and they have that conversation, yep. And then he kind of fades out. It kind of had, kind of the same feeling for me. Again, David Hewlett was terrific, and absolutely Paul McGillian. I remember seeing him at the wrap party after we killed off his character, and I was like, I already have an idea how we're going to bring your character back, and then we did at the end of season 4. Yeah.
All right. How was the creative process on Dark Matters different from your time with Stargate?
Well, Dark Matter was my show, and everything I had learned from Brad and Robert, the showrunners on Stargate, I applied to Dark Matter. I'm fond of telling the story where we were looking to cast someone, and we're going through the names of actors, and I mentioned someone, suggested someone, and Brad's response was LTS. I was like, well, what's LTS? And he's like, life's too short. Because there's just certain people in this industry that you just hear stories about, and no one wants to work with assholes. And so the one thing about Stargate, it was really hard, like any TV production was, but it was such a positive work environment. And that's the biggest lesson I took away from Stargate. So that when it was time to do my own show, Dark Matter, it was very much all about keeping things very positive. I would try to be on set and talk to the crew and make myself available to the actors if they ever had like script notes or anything. And at the end of the day, Stargate was Brad and Rob and Jonathan Glasner, but he had left by the time I had arrived there. So, even though Paul and I, my former writing partner, and I wrote almost like 70 scripts, at the end of the day, you were playing in someone else's sandbox. Whereas on Dark Matter was very much my show. I had basically been developing the show in my head for 7 years before we finally got the green light. So I knew every story and every beat of that first season. I knew all the backstories of the mysteries of the different characters. And so when it came time to sit down and run that room, we ended up pretty much putting together that entire first season, 13 episodes, in 2.5 weeks, which is insanely fast.
That's impressive. All right. Try to squeeze in one more. We got about 4 minutes. And I know you want to get to bed.
East Coast bedtimes.
Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
No, that's okay.
All right, are there any sci-fi projects you're currently working on or excited about that you can share with us?
I've got a couple of sci-fi projects. I'm into the crime shows. So I've watched almost like 800 international crime shows. I like maybe 1 in 6. And so a couple of the last pilots I've written have been crime shows. They've been optioned and they're going out and looking for homes. And I'm pitching a few. A sci-fi show I'm actually currently out pitching with Harry Kloor, who is a double PhD doctor and former writer on Star Trek Voyager and co-creator of, was it Earth Final Conflict, I think? Anyways, so we're out pitching an adaptation of Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle's The Mote in God's Eye, which is a sci-fi classic from the 70s. And it's a big shit-based show. Again, the type of show that is going to be challenging to find a home, just because, like I said, networks won't, pull the trigger on something like that. And so you have to go to the streamers, and there are only so many streamers. So that we're in the process of taking that one out. And that one is going to be a big swing. If we can sort of
what about using YouTube as a platform?
Well, YouTube would never be able to afford the type of show that, the type of money. Like you said, it gets cheaper as time goes on to, deliver better and better visuals, but it's still relatively expensive.
Okay. Oh, I had one other question in it. I'm having a blonde moment.
You can always DM me.
Yeah. Well, actually, it wasn't a question. It was going to be kind of like how sci-fi. It's funny that Sci-Fi Channel isn't really doing sci-fi anymore, and it just amazes me that they've kind of stepped away from that.
You can argue that they kind of stopped doing sci-fi a while ago. I mean, even when we were on, I remember they were running, I think, wrestling. I think it was SmackDown.
Yeah.
I'd be like, what kind of notes are you guys giving the SmackDown writers?
Yeah, and I mean, every now and then I still watch wrestling. It's entertainment, but it was like, why is it on sci-fi? It just did not add up. I'll tell you what, that's our time, actually. And you want to tell us where everybody can find you?
Well, you can definitely find me on X as under Baron Destructo. I'm fairly, I post every day. Usually I do behind the scenes snippets, bloopers, stories about the shows I've worked on. And like I said, I'm going to be kicking off this series. This July is going to be the best of. August is going to be Time Loopalooza, where we'll be focusing on all 51 Time Loop episodes ever produced. And we'll looking ahead to a few other themed months. So come check things out.
All right. Well, keep in touch. If you're ever in Florida, I'll buy you a drink. If you're ever in the Tampa area, let me know.
Deal.
All right, bud. Thank you.
Thanks,
you have a great night, and I cannot thank you enough for this opportunity.
Well, thanks for having me.
Anytime. All right.
Bye.
All right, everybody. And that went by a lot quicker than I thought. And for those listening, if you ever shouted Chevron 7 locked in public or secretly wished you had your own FTL drive, this episode was for you. Don't forget to catch Joseph Mallozzi, and I butchered it again, latest update online, and revisit those Stargate episodes with fresh eyes. And if you want more of that no filter, no nonsense truth, catch out BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The Black Pearl, his computer should be off life support and doing rehab this weekend. Edge of Liberty with Sackhead Sean, Mondays and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Mission Ready Men with Biggie Jackson, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And of course, you got me, Reaver of Common Sense, Jersey Joe, right here on Mondays and Fridays, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Live, rolling on Unapologetic. Make sure you join us every Monday and Friday. The fight for common sense starts with truth and ends with victory. Join the resistance. Join the Reaver of Common Sense. Have a great weekend, everybody.